Okay, good morning, everybody. Thanks for attending. This is a DVR Examiner feature focus webinar, and today's topic is tips and tricks, features you may not be aware of to best utilize DVR Examiner. My name is Mike, and I'm the Senior Customer Success Manager here at DME Forensics. We also have Nick and Cole with us today, who will help us answer any questions you guys may have. If you do have any questions, please feel free to type them into the Q&A section on the left of your screen, and we'll try to answer them as they arise. Otherwise, we'll get to them at the end of the webinar. As a disclosure, this webinar is also being recorded and will be posted online, and a link to that webinar will be sent to everyone who registered. So I want to spend as much time in actual DVR Examiner as possible, so I'll try to keep the slide presentation to a minimum. So let's jump right in and get started. To begin real quick, with the release of DVR Examiner version 3.1, we introduced some new features that will make DVR Examiner a better and more productive tool for you. Those include new and updated reporting, an in-application user feedback form, the ability to reconnect source data to a saved case, the ability to save default agency report and export settings, and we've also improved how jobs are displayed in the Case Explorer panel. And most of these new features will be covered as I go through the webinar. Those that I don't, I'll briefly go over at the end. So how can you best utilize DVR Examiner? To answer that question, I'm going to cover three specific topics that will hopefully help you use DVR Examiner to its fullest. Number one, workflows. What workflow works best for you? Not only can you scan, preview, and export your clips, but we've designed it in such a way that you can now manage your entire case in DVR Examiner. This means the ability to add case and incident information, as well as location, device, and source details to your case file. And by utilizing this workflow, you can build your entire case file from the ground up, keeping all your important information in one location. And while we certainly encourage you to use DVR Examiner to its fullest, we also understand that sometimes you just need your data and you need it quick. The second workflow simply involves scanning, finding your clips of interest, and exporting those clips. You don't want to fill out any information or add devices or locations. You just simply want your data. So I'll briefly go over the components of a case file with you, and I'll also perform what I like to call a data dump. Like I said, just quickly scanning, finding some clips of interest, and then exporting those clips. Number two, multiple sources. How can I handle multiple sources? With the release of version 3, you can now scan and ingest multiple sources into a single DVR case. So whether it's a single hard drive from 3 different DVRs or a single DVR with 3 hard drives, DVR Examiner can now detect and scan them into a single case, meaning that all the clips that DVR Examiner found across all those sources can be viewed in a single grid from the clip list. So I'll show you how to add multiple sources to a case file, as well as assigning multiple sources to a single or multiple devices. And number 3, reports. I'll cover what reports are available in DVR Examiner, as well as how to set up report defaults to achieve more consistency across all of your cases. Okay, so let's get started with workflows. And to do this, I'm going to switch over to DVR Examiner. In order to save time, I've already created a case and loaded that case into DVR Examiner. This case file includes 3 scanned sources and has all the information filled out. So the first workflow scenario that we talked about involves using DVR Examiner to create a complete case file. So not only are you using DVR Examiner just to get the data that you need, but you're also using it to build that complete case file around the evidence that you export. And this includes utilizing basically what I like to call the 5 main components of a case file. And they are the case details, the incident details, locations, and devices and sources. And these components are represented here in the case summary panel, or the case summary tab, as well as here in the Case Explorer panel. So let me show you a different representation of the Case Explorer panel that may be a little bit easier for you to understand. Whoops. Give me 1 sec. We'll get to the right screen. Okay. So this is an actual representation of the 5 components that comprise a case file. The great thing about this workflow is that it's meant to keep track of much more than just the evidence on your one drive. As I mentioned in the beginning, you can add multiple sources to your case file. And so to keep track of those sources, you can also add the devices and locations to your case. So looking at this representation, you can see several different scenarios you may encounter. Aside from potentially having a case that looks exactly like this, there are multiple other scenarios you may encounter. For example, a very common scenario is a single source attached to a single device and attached to a single location. That's a very common scenario on many cases that we work with. You may also have a more complex scenario in which multiple sources are recovered. In this case, we have two sources attached to one hard drive, or I'm sorry, two hard drives attached to one device, but we also potentially may have multiple devices and multiple locations in our case. You also may have incomplete information where you have potentially a source hard drive, but you don't know anything about the device or you don't know anything about the location, and therefore you really can't fill out that information. So again, depending on the scenario, depending on the case that you're working with, you could have multiple scenarios in which multiple sources, multiple devices, and multiple locations can be added to DVR Examiner. So back in DVR Examiner, a similar case to the one shown in that last slide that I just showed you is represented here on the left-hand side. I don't know if you saw the little icons on that sheet that I showed you, but these icons represent the different components. So right here we have a location that's represented by this icon. Underneath it, we have a device represented by this icon, and then underneath it, we have a source represented by the hard drive icon. When you talk about creating a workflow that utilizes the entirety of DVR Examiner, we're talking about filling out all of this information, including all of the case details, including all of the incident details, and adding as many locations, devices, and sources to your case as possible. The reason this is important is not only that it allows you to keep all of this information in one location in DVR Examiner, but if you do fill out all this information with the reporting that I'll be going over a little bit later, all of this information is now included in those reports. So you have all the information within DVR Examiner, but if your plan is to export a bunch of clips and then present those clips or present the reports, you have all of this information included in those reports. And again, like I said, I'll show you how those are included in those reports. The other workflow that I talked about was just a quick data dump, and that means you're not filling in case details, you're not filling in incident details, you're not adding locations and devices. You're simply just scanning a source, and you're filtering if you want, or you're exporting all of the clips. I want to briefly show you how to do that because I think there was some confusion regarding whether or not that functionality was still available in this version of DVR Examiner, or if you actually had to fill out all of the information. And the answer is no, you don't have to fill out all this information. You simply can, as in previous versions, scan your source data, filter on the clips if you want, and export the clips. So I'm going to show you really quick. We'll scan something really, really fast. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to scan this. While this is detecting, this detection results screen, this is not technically like a how-to webinar, so I don't want to get into all of the different detection results screens and all the features on this screen. But I did want to say that for a data dump, there are two ways to do it. You can scan the data, get all the clips back, and then create an export from the main screen in DVR Examiner. Or we actually have functionality here in the post-scan jobs that allow you to export media directly or immediately after the scan is complete. Personally, my preference is to scan the hard drive or image file first, and then that way I see all of the clips that are returned in the clip list. If I want to, I can filter clips, and then I could export the clips that I want. So this is going to scan. This is a really quick scan, but it returns 14,000 some hundred clips. And on the left-hand side here, you'll notice that this source was put into the Case Explorer panel, and all the source information is included down here on the left-hand side. And this includes the earliest clip found, the latest clip found, all the information that you're used to seeing in DVR Examiner. What I'd like to do though, because I'm just doing a data dump, somebody, my boss, just wants all of the clips out of DVR Examiner. In this example, they just want, for instance, all of the clips on November 9th. It looks like that this DVR hard drive has dates from November 6th to November 10th, but we just want to export clips from November 9th. So I'm going to come up here to the clip list filter, and I'm going to select a start date of November 9th. And I'm going to do an end date of November 9th, and we're going to do a start time of 12 a.m. And we're going to do an end time. I'm going to set it to 11:59, come up here and change this to 5:09. And if I want to get really detailed, I can change this to 11:59:59. Make sure that includes any clips that at least started recording on the 9th of November. Let's make this actually the 9th of November and not the 9th of December. Okay, so when we click apply here, what we should see is no clips returned. Well, that's strange. Let me find out why. Let's clear all and go back and see if we actually have clips on the 9th. Okay, we do have clips on the 9th. Oh, my bad. This is 2021 or 2020. So we need to go back all the way to 2020, and then we need to select November 9. And then let's go back to November 2020 and select November 9, 12 a.m. We'll come select, let's just do 11:30 for the sake of time. And then we're going to click apply. And what you can see here now is that out of the 14,667 clips, we have 3,568 clips remaining in the clip list. I'm going to go ahead and close my clip list filter. And because I'm doing a data dump, the boss doesn't care. I don't care what's on the video. I just want to export my clips. I can simply now select all, and then I can right click and export selected clips, or there's an option up here to export selected clips as well. And when we do that, we open up an export tab and all of our clips are in there. And again, you guys should be very familiar with how to export clips. You need to make sure you fill out the media formats, at least one media format, select your export destinations, and then also the types of reports that you want. While I'm here, and I was going to talk about reporting a little bit later, I want to briefly go over a little change that we made to hash reporting in version 3.1. In the previous version, if you selected a hash algorithm, DVR Examiner would ask you if you wanted to create a separate hash report, meaning that those hash values would be generated and stored on a separate report, separate than the export report. In this version, you don't have that option. When you select a hash algorithm, DVR Examiner is automatically going to create an Excel hash report for you. That way, you have all of those values in the export format or the Excel format. That's then going to be easily sortable or filterable for you. So just a little bit change on the reporting for hash values or hash algorithms. So that's a data dump. Again, I didn't fill out anything. If you come back to the case summary tab, there's no incident details filled out, no location details filled out, no devices. I mean, there's nothing. All I did was I added the source, I filtered on some of the clips, and I exported. And that's a data dump. And it's certainly a way to use DVR Examiner. However, like I said before, we do encourage you to use DVR Examiner to its fullest and use the case details and incident details. And as I get into this next section, actually using multiple sources, which was a huge addition we made into version 3. So number 2 was, how do I handle multiple sources? When I talked about the 5 components, I mentioned how it's possible to have multiple sources in a single location, but how do you manage those sources? So do you have only one source, or do you have one DVR with a couple hard drives, or do you have a bunch of different locations that potentially have evidence on it that contain each a DVR and each their own hard drive? So I'm going to come back and I'm actually going to open up that saved case file that I had previously. And because it has a bunch of the, it has all of the sources already added into the case file. So that'll save us a little time. So once this opens, you're going to see on the left-hand side here, you're going to see all of my sources. In this case, I have one source, I have two sources, three sources, and I have four sources loaded into this case. And depending again on where these sources come from, you can assign each source a device or a location. So I wanted to briefly go over the different types of scenarios that you may encounter within DVR Examiner, whether or not you have one source or multiple sources. In this case here, again, this is that representation where you have only one source and one device and one location. In this instance here, we actually have two devices that were found in one location, and one of the devices had one hard drive and the other device had two hard drives. So this represents that scenario. You may also come across a situation where you don't know where, for instance, the hard drive came from. Maybe it was just sitting out on a counter somewhere and you don't know the DVR. You certainly don't have to associate a source with a device, as well as you certainly don't have to associate a device with the location. Again, I don't want to get too much into how DVR Examiner functions here, but when you talk about this Case Explorer panel here and keeping track and managing all of the data in your case, this is a really great way to do it because it shows you the hierarchy of everything that you have in your case file. Because these are indented under these node above it, that means that there's an association to it. Let's say, for instance, that I had a hard drive that I don't know what the DVR is, or I don't know where it came from. If I move it out of a device and out of a location, this source is going to be sitting there by itself. It's not going to be represented or associated to any device or any location above it. So that's another scenario that you may come across, or that's what the scenario looks like actually when we just did that data dump. You didn't have any devices or locations entered. All you saw was your source located underneath your case folder here. So it looks confusing, but once you understand how the hierarchy works as far as locations, devices, and sources, it is really, really an easy way to manage your case, especially when you have a bunch of hard drives. A great, easy way to manage them as far as where they came from. In that aspect, when you do add devices and locations to your source or to your case file, you can add as much information as you want. We have name, make, model, serial number. You can actually add images of the device. So it's not just a way to keep track here, but it's also a way to keep track of all the other evidence that you may have in your for the particular case that you're working on. So that's multiple sources and how to handle them, or again, if you're only using a single source. The third thing I wanted to talk about was reporting. And with version DVR Examiner 3.1, we completely changed reporting. We've made it better, and we've actually added 3 additional report types. And so I want to briefly go over reporting. If you come up into the Tools tab in DVR Examiner and click on Generate Report, this is new in version 3.1. It opens up this Generate Reports window. And within this reports window, you have the ability to generate any report that DVR Examiner has to offer. The 3 new reports that we've incorporated into this version is a case summary report, a gallery preview report, and a detection results report. And I'll briefly explain those in just a second. But on this screen, it's really simple. The idea is if you want to generate any of these reports, simply select the report, select the report format. We can either have an Adobe PDF or an Excel format, and then specific or different settings for that report. For instance, if you want to generate a clip list report and you want to include thumbnails and notes and tags, you can simply select those checkboxes, and thumbnails and tags will be included in the report. There are 3 different types of reports here that actually require you to make an additional selection as to what report you want generated. The first one being a gallery report. And as you look here, there's nothing I can select. And then the reason is because I haven't generated a gallery preview yet. This gallery report is a report that displays the gallery preview tab. So I can quickly go in and show you here. If we take a clip list and we go generate gallery preview, what this is going to do, this is going to take that clip and it's going to pull out all of the iframes on the clip, and it's going to display thumbnails for all those iframes in one screen. And this is a really fast way for you to be able to go through a clip without playing the entire clip, and to see if there is, for instance, a subject or a vehicle or something in the clip that may be of interest to you. You can then simply double click on that frame and it's going to open up a preview to that point in the clip, so you can play it from that point forward. So going back to the gallery preview tab, what this report is a report that basically displays all of these iframe thumbnails along with any metadata information that we display here. And it also, again, includes all of the case or incident details that you may have filled out in your case. So now that we have a gallery tab open, we can come in here and we can select from the drop down, and we see that gallery tab is listed here, and we can select to generate a report for that, which I'm going to do real quick, and we'll let it generate. Back in here, we also have one additional feature here called additional destination folders. So what this allows you to do is when you select to generate any of these reports, or I should say any of the first 5 reports, all of these reports are going to be automatically saved to your case folder. And the case folder is designated when you start DVR Examiner, save a case for the first time. The export report, when you select to generate an export report, it will be generated in the export destination that you selected when you started the export job. If I go ahead and select export here, you'll see that I don't have anything to select from because I haven't selected and I haven't created an export yet from this case. So keep with that in mind, with the gallery preview report and the export report, these are only going to be available for any tab that is currently open. So in this case, I only have one gallery tab open, so I only have one selection here. If I close that gallery tab, I immediately lose access to being able to complete a report for that gallery preview. I would have to regenerate the gallery preview. And the same thing goes for export reports. Once you generate an export job and that export is complete, you will be able to come into the generate reports window here and create an additional export report if you want for that export job. But as soon as you close that export tab, you will no longer be able to create another report, a copy of that export report. So keep that in mind. You have to keep the tabs open if you want to generate additional reports.
Hey, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Hey, we got a couple questions here. First one is there an option to concatenate all reports?
There is not. Each individual report will be created on its own as its own PDF or Excel file, and will be a separate file generated in the case folder or the export folder. Currently, there is no way to concatenate anything or to put them all into one report. However, with that said, I do want to let you know that, and I'll show you this when we generate a couple of reports. The reports that get generated have all of the information in them. So when you generate a gallery preview report, it's going to have all of the case information, all of the incident information in it. It's going to have all of your hierarchy as far as if you added sources, locations, and devices. And let me actually just go show you. So I just generated a gallery report. Actually, I don't remember if I did. So let me go ahead and generate the report. I'm going to take that one off, and I'm going to generate the gallery report. What you're going to see over here in the details panel is that the gallery report was actually completed in the PDF format, and we actually have a link here where we can open up the report. And so if we open up the report, what you'll see here is this is a whole new reporting style from the previous version, even from 3.0.7, completely new. But we have all of the case details and we have all the incident details that we filled out. And this is why I personally think it's important if you want to a complete case file, and if you plan on, or your intent is to share this information with another investigator or with another department, and you hand over the files, this is a great way to hand over not only the files, but all the information pertaining to that case. And it's everything's listed out. So this is just page 1. Page 2 has all the case hierarchy, meaning it has all the locations that we entered, has all the devices that we entered, and it has all the sources that we entered. And then in this particular case, the gallery preview list, or the gallery preview report, again shows all the iframe thumbnails with all of the excuse me, with all the information for each of the thumbnails. That's just a gallery preview report. If I come in here and I take a look at, for instance, a case summary report that I created, the case summary report is going to have pretty much all of the same information: the case details, incident details, the case hierarchy. In this case, we also have device image list of any devices that we have. That's my baby Abby. So while you can't, then there's no functionality to concatenate the reports. Most of the reports, oops, did I just close DVR Examiner? Most of the reports do have most of the information contained within a case in that report. I hope that makes sense, and I hope that answers your question. So do we have another one, Nick?
Nope, that was the only one we were able to answer. The other ones, all good.
Okay, cool. So again, going back to reports, we all know that when you export clips, DVR Examiner automatically generates an export report. But there are so many other reports now available in DVR Examiner that help you create that entire case within DVR Examiner. The other one that I didn't show you, I think, was the detection report, which is a new in this version. In this case, since I have 4 sources scanned, I have the ability to create a report for each of the detections. And when I do that, oops, you'll see again that the reports are not only added to my reports in the Case Explorer panel, but I have details for each report now in the details panel. So I can click on any report that I've ever generated, and I can get information on that report, and I can also open that report. So as long as the report doesn't move, or the location of that report doesn't change, that link is going to work. This is the detection report. Again, it's the exact same first page, case and incident details. And then in this case, the second page is going to be all of your detection results. So we have the source information, we have the file system name that that DVR Examiner detected for that particular hard drive. And then we have all of the supported features within that file system and all of the output formats. So anything you need to know about that source data and what DVR Examiner detected can be found in the detection results report. And then we also have a glossary here for all of the different fields in the detection results report. If you want to know what those exactly mean, they're listed here in a glossary. So that's the detection results report. The export report is pretty much the same. I mean, the format, the layout has changed to match all of our other reports, but it for the most part is the same as far as a PDF report. We did completely revamp Excel reports, and for those of you guys out there that love Microsoft Excel like me, when you export clips in an Excel format, you can now open that Excel report and you can much easier sort and filter on the data within that report. So we've made that much easier. I know in the past you really couldn't do much with an Excel report, or at least for those of you that use Excel for what it's designed to be used for, you really couldn't do much with our report. So if you love Excel, if you liked it, and then you want to be able to sort and weed out certain information, I certainly encourage you to try to export into an Excel format. It's a whole new experience. At least for me, it was a good experience for that matter. So that's generate reports, and in the same aspect of how we generate reports, we've also now given you guys the ability to set report defaults, meaning that every time you open this, if your agency specifies that you always want thumbnails or notes and tags, for instance, in your clip list, or your agency specifies that your clip list is always to be in a certain format, you can now actually set default settings for all those reports in our settings window. So if you've noticed, in our settings window, we actually have 3 new tabs. We have an agency, an export, and a report tab, and these all pertain to setting default settings. I'm going to start with the report one, and you can see it looks very, very similar to the generate reports screen, but this is default settings. So for instance, if I always wanted an audit log in Excel format, I would simply select Excel for that. And if I wanted to always include thumbnails and notes and tags, I would select those. Again, if I wanted to add any destination folders or remove any destination folders in this case, I could make those modifications and click save. And then when I come in to generate reports, you'll notice now that my thumbnails and notes and tags are defaulted to checked. My audit log is defaulted to Excel, and I've removed that destination that was in there previously. So that's a really nice, easy way to set defaults for the reports, especially if you generate a lot of reports or you like to generate them in multiple locations. You can set that information here. On the same note, agency default settings is the same thing. We have 4 different fields that you can set: agency name, examiner, address, and contact information. And when you fill this out and click save, the next case that you open in DVR Examiner, that information will show up automatically in your case details. And these are the 4 fields here. Oops. Agency, address, examiner, and contact. So those are just defaults, because we don't anticipate those things changing a lot, and why should you have to enter those every single time? So we now have given you the ability to set those as defaults. And the last defaults that we have are actually in export settings. There's 4 different default settings. The first one being an output media format. So depending on the file system that DVR Examiner returns, you're either going to be able to export into an open file format or a proprietary video format, or both. And some also support subtitles for AVIs. By selecting this as a default, if that file system supports that video format, that option will automatically be checked in the export. And I can show you that real quick. So in this case, I'm going to select all 3. So if whatever I'm exporting happens to support all 3, those will be automatically checked. I've already set up a destination folder, so I don't have to set that each time I export, and that's really helpful. If, for instance, you export to a NAS or you export to the same location every single time, now you don't have to keep entering that or keep browsing to it. You can enter it once in the default settings here and be done with it. Same for hash algorithm. If your agency protocols say that you have to create a hash every single time you export, you can enter that information here. In this case, I'm always required to export all of my clips with an MD5 hash algorithm. And then you can also set up folder organization depending on how you like to view files. I won't get into that. That's nothing new, but those are just defaulted now. So when we click save, now if we come back into the clip list and we do a really simple export of 1 clip, what you'll notice here is that because I have all of my defaults entered, that these nodes are all collapsed. And that means that there's no more information that I'm required to fill out in order to begin my scan. And you can tell because my begin scan button is active. It's not grayed out. If there was something that I hadn't filled out that is required in order for me to begin the scan, that button would be gray. For instance, so you remember when I filled out or I checked all 3 all 3 options on my default settings. In this case, this file system allows me to export open file and proprietary video, but it doesn't allow me to export SRT files. So those 2 file types are automatically selected for me. If just for example, if I decided to not select any, you'll see how that begin export button is grayed out. So you always have to make sure that at least one option in each of these nodes is selected in order for that begin export button to be active. Same with export destination. I had that one filled out already, and so it added it to my export destinations. If I remove it, my begin export button is removed. And the same goes with reports. There's nothing here that you can deselect to make that button not active, but this is where you can select different types of reports. In this case, I have Adobe or Excel, and then this is where I had selected in the default settings my MD5 hash algorithm. So again, that's just a really nice way to really quickly set up export default settings. If you do a lot of exporting, you don't have to enter those each time into DVR Examiner. So again, I encourage you guys all to utilize the reports even more than you were in the past because they're all revamped. The new reports definitely contain a lot more data and a lot more information about your case. But that's as long as you fill out the information, which again, we certainly encourage you to do. So that's the 3 different workflows that I wanted to talk about. And while going over those 3 different workflows, I did cover most of the new features that were included in version 3.1. And I covered the updated reports for you. I kind of showed you the 3 new reports that we have. And I also showed you the default report agency and export settings. And I kind of briefly went over the jobs details in the Case Explorer panel. A couple things I didn't go over that I want to go over really quickly with you is the in-application user feedback and the ability to reconnect source data to a saved case. Quickly, the in-application user feedback form, it's a quick way to submit bugs, comments, and concerns. Gives you the ability to include important information in that submission, including logs and screen captures. However, in order to use this feature in DVR Examiner, your PC must be internet connected. If it's not, that feature will be grayed out. And it's in the Help tab here. If you click on the Provide Feedback button, it's going to open up a Provide Feedback window. Again, mine's active because I have an internet connection. But really quickly, if you have a bug, let us know about it. If you have a feedback, comments, questions, anything you want to ask us, please feel free to use this in-application feedback form to let us know. Make sure you fill out your name and email address. And if you want us to follow up, make sure that you select Request Follow-up. And then again, if it's a bug, we certainly encourage you to make sure that these are selected. So these attach just the most recent log file and also a screen capture of what is currently being displayed on DVR Examiner. So it just little things to help us try to resolve the bug for you if that's what you're submitting. So that's the in-application user feedback. Really simple, really neat tool. But again, you have to be internet connected in order to use that. Otherwise, you know how to get a hold of us just through the support at DME Forensics email channel. Okay, the other thing is the ability to reconnect source data to a saved case. So this was a big one in that in previous versions, if for some reason the source data moved locations or the file name of that, for instance, that image file had changed, if you were to try to load a saved case and that happened, DVR Examiner would not be able to reconnect that source data to that saved case, and for the most part, you have a saved case file that was worthless. You couldn't do anything with it. So with this version, we've now given you the ability to browse and reconnect that source data. And I'll quickly show you how to do that. It's a pretty neat thing, pretty neat feature. So I'm going to close out of here, and I'm going to load a saved case that I created earlier. In this case, the only thing that I did is I changed the file name of the image file that I scanned. So when you load this saved case, what's going to come up is a locate unavailable sources window, and DVR Examiner is going to tell you, hey, you have this source in this saved case. We don't know where it's at. Can you please help us locate it? By clicking locate source, I can then now go out to that specific source file. In this case, that's my source file, and click open. And DVR Examiner now, as long as that image file is the same image file, the contents of the image file are the same, DVR Examiner is going to be able to load that into the case, into the home screen, and you're going to have all your clips from that saved case. But remember, it's the contents of the saved case file need to be the same. So you can't alter an image file. You can't try to connect, for instance, perhaps a segmented image of an image file that you used originally, a non-segmented image file that you used originally. Even though the data in those files may be the same, when you put them all together, because it's not the same file, the content of that one file is not the same, DVR Examiner is not going to work for you on that. So again, it's just a name change or a file location change where that works. But it's a really neat feature, because sometimes, especially if you export to the NAS, we know that sometimes NAS locations change, or you move things around, and now you're going to be able to reassociate that source data to your case file. So those were the only two other things within DVR Examiner as far as new features that I wanted to cover. So I think that's about it. We kind of covered a lot today as far as how to best utilize DVR Examiner and what workflows work best for you. We covered multiple sources, and we also covered the different types of reports in DVR Examiner, and hopefully how those can help you build a complete case file. And then I also covered all of the new features in version 3.1. So I hope that helps you guys. If you have any additional questions, I'm going to stop talking for like a minute or so and see if anybody has any questions that they want asked, and we'll get those answered. If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up this webinar. There were a couple of questions brought up earlier that I wanted to address. Just clarify, I suppose, but before I let you guys go. In DVR Examiner 3.1, you do have, like I mentioned, the ability to ingest multiple sources into your single case file. I want to just let you guys know that currently the way DVR Examiner works is that while you can certainly add multiple sources as fast as you want, each source is not going to scan until the previous source is completed scanning. So right now, it's the sources that you add after the first one are going to get put into a queue, and they will be scanned as soon as the previous source is completed scanning. So you may see occasionally where if especially you did add a bunch of sources really quick. And that's one thing I kind of didn't go over. You can add multiple sources, and the case that I loaded the first time that had, I think, 4 sources loaded into it. Loading sources is easy. It's simple as coming up to your case file and clicking add source as many times as you need to get all of these sources into your case file, or right-clicking your case node and going add source here. And like I said, you can do that as many times as you want. I don't know if we have an upper limit on the number of sources that you can add, but that's how you do it. You just keep adding sources. So I don't know if I kind of covered that and how to actually get multiple sources into a case file. So that's it. You add one, you get to your home screen, and you can just keep clicking add source and adding it into your Case Explorer panel. So that was that. All right. I don't think we have any other questions, so I think we're going to wrap it up. I think this went a little bit shorter than planned, or longer. I actually don't know. But I appreciate everybody that joined today. Again, if you guys have any questions regarding DVR Examiner 3.1, any of its new features, or any questions in general about DVR Examiner, myself, I'm here, Nick's here, Cole's here, Kate's here. We're all here to help you guys out. So please always feel free to give us a call or send us an email at support@DME Forensics, and we're happy to answer any questions you have. On the same note, if you're new to DVR Examiner and you're here today and you don't feel comfortable in DVR Examiner, or you didn't quite understand some of the things that I talked about, we do offer one-on-one training. It's a simple 30 to 45 minute screen share where we talk with you on the phone, and we go through DVR Examiner, and we do a typical workflow from scanning a hard drive all the way to exporting some clips. So if none of this made sense to you, or if you just want a refresher course on how DVR Examiner version 3 works, please reach out to us, and we're always happy to help you. So again, thank you. I appreciate all of you guys' time. Please stay safe out there, and wish everybody a very happy holiday. Thank you.